Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel. I'm so very glad you've joined me this evening, and I've got a phenomenal story for you tonight that you're going to just love. And it's all about the legendary creature known as Mothman. All around the world, there have been humanoid sightings of winged creatures. Some have been seen over Russia, over America, all over the world, and certainly the Point Pleasant area and West Virginia, where lots of sightings of the Mothman have been seen. And we wonder this very one big question: what on earth is this creature? Is it of this world, or is it supernatural, or of extraterrestrial nature? Well, this is where tonight's story is going to be of great interest to you. But before I get started, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because I've got so many interesting stories coming up that you do not want to miss out on. And as for my subscribers, you guys just rock. You are the most incredible, wonderful, down-to-earth people, and I love you so much. So let's get started. You're going to enjoy tonight's story. Is Mothman a harbinger of doom? If you hear a violent, thunderous flapping sound from a hefty, heavy wingspan, and you just happen to glance up into the dark sky for a second on a moonless night, you may just see him. He is a creature like no other. Some say a messenger of evil tidings, a harbinger of doom, or an angel of death. And over half a century, there have been many recorded sightings of this menacing and flying humanoid. Indeed, all around the globe, there have been strange sightings of flying humanoids everywhere. And these strange sightings appear to be on the increase. The question is, what or who are they, and where or what do they come from? There is one that is well known by now, and he is called the Mothman. And he soars the skies like a gigantic flying humanoid, seeking who he can devour and destroy from a very vast height. No one is safe under the foreboding, menacing glare of those steely red eyes that miss nothing and see absolutely everything. He stands at 6 to 9 feet tall, an imposing creature, with monstrously huge black feathery wings, a low-slung head, and huge red eyes that are seemingly not of this world. Indeed, this predatory creature was seen by many horrified witnesses around the same time, or even before, the most disastrous Silver Bridge collapse West Virginia has ever witnessed in the town of Mount Pleasant. The majestic bridge stood proud, gracing the Ohio River, until 5 p.m. on the 15th of December, 1967. And then it crumbled apart like a heap of Lego blocks and fell into bits and pieces into the murky depths of this river, throwing its victims into its watery grave of freezing cold temperatures. It was declared that this 1928 bridge was structurally flawed, which was why it had succumbed to such a deadly fate, devouring mercilessly over 40 wasted lives. Yet others believed that Mothman was directly implicated in this dreadful disaster and had something to do with it, that almost affected the entire town with a huge veil of grief, while others say that it was a sign witnessed by many of the impending doom that was to come, that ultimately led to the tragic Silver Bridge collapse. My story happened in the February of 1967, when my sister Beatrice and I went to stay with my aunt in Point Pleasant. We were very excited by the visit, and people at that time were still talking about the mysterious Silver Bridge collapse. My aunt had lost a good friend in the disaster, and she was still grieving her untimely demise. When we arrived at her quaint little cottage, we received a rapturous welcome from our warm and wonderful aunt. She was so thrilled to see us and brought all our luggage in and led us into a beautiful, large, airy and spacious bedroom where we were to stay, which was decorated in warm yellows and whites, and was so uplifting it reminded us of a bright summer's day, something that we needed in the middle of winter. I sat at my aunt's kitchen table, sipping hot coffee and eating her delicious homemade pumpkin pie with lashings of thick, fresh cream. And then I proceeded to ask her all about the bridge collapse that had occurred a couple of months earlier, and was still a hot topic of conversation among all the townsfolk in the area, who still clearly suffered the post-traumatic ramifications of that disaster. "Well, it was rush hour, you know," said my aunt, chewing a mouthful of pumpkin pie thoughtfully. "It was bumper-to-bumper traffic on that day. Oh, it couldn't have been a worse time of day for sure, for anything to happen. And just in seconds, that bridge just crumbled like that. When I watched it on the television, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Everyone in town has been affected in some way, because it's a small town, and most of us know each other, or know of someone who was tragically killed on that bridge. I believe that water was iced over on that day. I'm not sure about it, but I think it was. So can you imagine how cold it must have been?" "Tell us about your friend," I asked, "the one who you lost in the tragedy." "Oh, what a lovely woman. Oh, she had the heart of a lion. She would have given you her shoe and her shirt off her back. She was my very best friend. We told each other absolutely everything, kept no secrets from each other at all. I'm still struggling to come to terms with her death because it seems so pointless, so unfair, and so crazy that this whole thing actually happened." I saw my aunt wiping away some tears from her face. "Sorry, I just get emotional talking about all this stuff. Oh, I just think it hits a raw nerve, you know." "Of course it does," I said, stroking my aunt's arm reassuringly. "You weren't to know this tragedy would happen. It wasn't your fault. None of us would have known that this was going to happen." My aunt looked at me with a grave expression written on her face. I should have listened when my friend told me about her terrifying dream. I just took it all like a pinch of salt, and I told her not to worry, because dreams are just dreams and nothing else. That's what I thought. And now, of course, I really regret that. "What dream?" I asked. My friend dreamt very vividly, and she dreamt about this monstrously huge humanoid-like creature. She told me it had a massive wingspan and bright red, huge compound eyes. And she said it was so real, she was not actually sure if she dreamt it or she actually saw it. She said that the dream was so real that she could have almost touched the creature, and that this bird-like being just literally floated above her body while she slept. "How horrible," I gasped. "The creature she described sounds like the Mothman. You think she saw him?" My aunt nodded. "Oh, yes, I do. And I think it was a harbinger of doom, I really do. A bearer of very bad news. And many people witnessed this flying humanoid before the bridge collapsed in Point Pleasant. I heard a lot of people talking all about it. There were so many sightings of the thing. Well, that's what I heard." "So what did your friend that died say about the Mothman that she actually saw in her dream?" "Well, she came to me. Oh, I remember that day. Oh, it was a terrible day. And she was in a dreadful panic. Oh, she was convinced she was going to die. She was so frantic about it. She said she had this gut-wrenching sense of knowing that something quite dreadful was going to happen to her. She said that even a year before her dream, she had this foreboding feeling and heavy impression of her future. But after the visitation from this winged humanoid with the fiery red eyes, she was almost certain that the days of her life on this earth were numbered. She was convinced that this creature had come to tell her that her life was about to end very shortly. And we know that it did." "It must have been a dreadful death," said my aunt, looking desperately sad. "Oh, poor thing. All I can say is I just hope it was quick." "I'm sure it was," I said, trying to be reassuring. "I wonder," I said, if other people who died on that bridge may have had similar dreams. You know, it's not something you would necessarily share with someone. If I had a dream like that, I know I wouldn't share it with anyone, would you? Oh, I agree. You know, we all have this inbuilt fear of death, said my aunt. And so it's natural to shrug off any gloomy thoughts that we might have and dismiss them out of hand as vain imaginings. Yes, I think if I had a visitation from a creature like that in my dreams, yes, I would be terrified to share it with someone. It would be like I was tempting fate in some way. The subject of Mothman was luckily soon forgotten, as my sister scurried around preparing herself for a date that she had accepted with a local boy from Point Pleasant, who had met her at the grocery store earlier in the day and asked her out. I could sense her excitement because she said she felt an instant attraction to the boy, and it was a long time since she had felt that way about anyone. I reluctantly decided to retire to bed early that night. I was exhausted after the long conversation and intense discussion about the Mothman, and all about the Silver Bridge collapse. It left a horrible taste in my mouth, and I couldn't help wondering and hoping that tomorrow's conversations would be of a lighter variety and more cheerful and uplifting. Suddenly I found myself, after dozing off, being shaken violently by my sister, and I was not happy to be woken up like this. After all, I was in the middle of a really lovely dream, and I didn't want to stop dreaming, but my sister's continuous shaking of my body persisted. "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" she said, shaking me up. I sat bolt upright on my bed, looking at my sister in alarm. "What on earth is wrong?" I asked. "Why are you shaking me like this? You look like you've seen a ghost. Are you all right?" "I'm going to die," she said. There was a silence for a moment, and then she repeated it. "Did you hear what I said? I'm going to die, and very soon." "What?" I said. "What on earth are you talking about? Of course you're not going to die. Where did you get that crazy idea from?" "I saw him," said my sister. "I saw the Mothman tonight. I saw the harbinger of doom, the bearer of bad tidings, the angel of death. And he stared at me with those big red horrible eyes of his." "What? Are you sure?" I asked. "I'm as sure can be," said my sister, tears pouring down her face. "I know what I saw, and I knew what it meant, and I don't know what to do." My sister started to sob violently as I took her into my arms and consoled her. "Just because you saw him does not mean you're going to die. I'm sure a lot of people have seen him and they haven't died. Tell me, what did you see?" "Well, I don't know the area around here very well, as you know, but we were driving. I think William was calling it the TMT area. It was past the power plant building there, and suddenly we saw this huge humanoid creature, and it had long black feathery wings. They were horrible, and huge red eyes, the biggest that I've ever seen. Well, William accelerated the car, and we literally speeded up as fast as we could, and so did the creature. It was flying alongside us at 100 miles an hour, and it was looking in at us with these horrible, evil, red, ugly eyes. It had a hypnotic effect on us, and we were so frightened. I was screaming for William to drive faster and faster, but he was going as fast as he possibly could. He kept his foot down hard on the accelerator, and we were driving fast as conceivably possible. The creature followed us all the way to the town, and then we heard a thrashing and a pounding and a beating on our car roof as those wings flapped and banged against it with such a powerful force that they actually dented the roof of William's car. Oh, it's going to cost a lot to repair. You should have seen the indentation. It was huge, and that thing was mighty heavy. A couple of onlookers in the town, when they saw this thing standing there on the roof, like a menacing gargoyle, I watched them. They ran away screaming as fast as they could at the top of their lungs. I've never seen people look so afraid in all of my life. Did the creature follow you here? I asked more seriously. My sister nodded, looking sheepish. Well, when William parked the car here and he dropped me off, we were pretty much convinced that the creature had finally flown away. At least we hoped we had, and it looked like it had, so we were relieved. I told William to go quickly in case this thing suddenly came back and attached itself to his car. I watched him drive off, and then I let myself in through the front door, and then I heard a crashing sound on the picket fence, and lo and behold, there it was again, staring at me and swinging backwards and forwards on the fence, like it was taunting me. It followed me here, and it's still out there. What does it want with me? She asked me in terror. Is it still there? I asked, getting off my bed and running over to the kitchen window that overlooked our aunt's picket fence. The outside light illuminated the whole area very brightly, and there it was. I saw the formidable presence standing on the picket fence. It was the largest winged creature that I have ever seen in my entire life, and it seemed to be covered with silvery black down. But it was the red, menacing, compound-shaped eyes that stared right through me that set my nerves on edge. My heart was pounding violently like a heavy drum, and I could feel it throbbing through my chest. My whole body seemed to break out into a cold sweat, and I started shivering as if I was in Arctic conditions, but my aunt's house was exceedingly warm that day. Even my teeth were rattling in my mouth as my whole body simply wobbled like a jelly. The creature looked at me directly with intense red eyes and held my gaze, and I could physically not turn away from that physical hold it had over me. It felt like electricity was going right through my body. The creature seemed to smirk at me, like he was toying at me and enjoying my paralyzing fear, as if it was some kind of enjoyable game for him. Suddenly before our eyes, the creature seemed to fade away until it was finally gone, just like a ghost. You see that? The creature is supernatural, said my sister. It vanished before our very eyes. Now that's not a natural phenomenon. This creature is not of this world, and that is for sure. I was utterly terrified. I had never physically witnessed something like this before, and I was almost certain that whatever this thing was, it was supernatural. The next morning we told our aunt what had happened, and she said that something needed to be done immediately to stop us from succumbing to a deadly fate. If we do not do something now, you are both going to end up in serious trouble, or worse still, you could end up like my friend, and I cannot allow that to happen to either of you. I've lost too much already, and I'm not losing you both as well. My aunt piled us in the back of her car, and we drove for an hour and a half, away from the Mount Pleasant area. I'm not sure exactly where we were. I watched my aunt veer off a main road and turn down a very wide dirt road, and then she took a left-hand turning up a spirally narrow path that looked way too small for a car to venture down. It was very hard for her to navigate the vehicle without edging over into the grassy curb, but somehow she managed. Finally, the car reached an enormous black metal gate that was wide open. We drove down the long gravel pathway towards a pretty white house with large open French windows that were very big. Terracotta pots full of colourful cascading blooms greeted us, and the grass that was mown was manicured to perfection. A lady with a merry heart-shaped face, curious brown eyes, and long hazel hair tied back in a ponytail greeted us both warmly. She was wearing a loose white pair of flowing cotton pants and a matching top, and she had an artsy look about her. My aunt explained what had happened to us during the night and how this entity we had seen could pose a dreadful impending threat over our lives. "Is there any way that we can reverse this damage?" my aunt asked anxiously. "I'm so afraid my two nieces may be in serious danger of something terrible happening to them." "Well, there is something we can do," said the lady. "First of all, we need to remove any negative attachments, entities and implants. We need to cleanse the auric field and the energy field. And once that's cleared, they will be fine. You see, if the negative energy is not drained away, it can invite perilous consequences. So removal of spiritual sucking leeches or parasites from the life force is imperative. And you will be surprised how many we gather over a lifetime. I'd also like to unblock all the 7 chakras to bring balance and healing to the body." We were directed into a very spacious, airy room and asked to lie back on these long cotton mattresses on the wooden floor. We watched the woman fill the room with clouds of smoke, which she smudged over our bodies with these thick cigar-shaped incense sticks. She then started to rattle strange instruments around us and even played the Tibetan bowls and other instruments with different frequencies, which she said would release all the negative attachments to our bodies. She said to us that these attachments did not like those frequencies. I know this sounds crazy, and I don't know how to explain it to you, but I promise you, as weird as this may sound, I could feel heavy energies lifting and leaving my body, like a cloud of heavy fog. And after a while we heard the loud flapping sound of heavy wings leaving the room, and those wings, my sister told me later, sounded like the wings of the Mothman that were on her roof the night before. Suddenly everything was very still and quiet, and I could see the lady who had been doing the clearing suddenly looking utterly and totally exhausted. "This is the worst energy clearing I have ever done," she said. "Your negative attachment was enormously strong. It was forceful and very resistant. But he's gone. He's finally gone from you." I later learnt from my aunt that she had actually seen a demonic, monstrous form in a smoky haze leaving the house at the same time of the clearing. Whether it was Mothman, I do not know, but we definitely heard the wings of the creature during our session, so I'm pretty sure he finally left us. 2 days after our clearing, we felt so much better, so much lighter, so much healthier, and so much more positive. And then we heard the terrible news about William, my sister's date, who had actually seen the Mothman while driving through the TMT area and was now found mysteriously floating head down and lifeless in his neighbour's pond, which was all very peculiar. According to the neighbours, he had never once visited their house before, so why he was found there and died in that way was very uncanny and extraordinarily unusual. I also learnt that he was a phenomenal swimmer. It would seem that bizarre and unusual deaths are connected to this mystical Mothman creature. So there you are. That is my story. What Mothman is, I do not know. Some say he's a result of a government experiment gone hideously wrong. Some say he's a mutant monster, a space alien, a demonic interdimensional being, a fallen angel, or an angel of death. I do not know what he is, but I do know he is physical and he is supernatural, both at the same time. And one thing I know certain, for very much certain, this thing is real, and for your sake, I hope he will never cross your path. Well, thank you so much for that incredible story, that amazing letter. I can honestly say I also agree. Mothman is clearly not of this world. Until next time, goodbye and good night.